my dear friend, and if you don't mind me saying my dear elder as well, a respected elder that we learned from. I want to pass it on to Henry, really, and thank you once again.
You tell the truth. Thank you, Mohammed. This is an amazing iteration of any show that I've ever done. This is really spectacularly beautiful and so impressive and grand, and for me to see that entrance, coming across the plaza out there was like mind-blowing, and to come in and see this beautiful show. Thank you so much, and to all the people who have supported it, and all the institutions who have supported it. And to me, my whole story with it begins when New York was at the bottom, and going down the drain. It was only a couple of years before the President of the United States said, "There's no more money for you, New York, you're finished." And it was, the middle class was fleeing, and the Bronx was burning, and East New York was burning, and it was pretty terrible, and it was a little scary to go there. So, but all of our mentors, my wife is in the theater, and I was making sculpture, and our mentors were saying, "Yeah, but you have to go to New York if you want to know what the culture is. That's where the art culture is. You just have to go there, but a little scary, we'll get mugged and stuff." So we went, and it never ceased to blow my mind living in New York, and the incredible culture that was going on. We got there in 70, 72, 73, and there was already graffiti there was a gallery, and there were the artists who had been painting the trains were in this gallery, and I wanted to take pictures of it to show my friends outside of New York. See, New York's not so bad. In fact, it's very exciting. So this is why we came. We wanted to So when I finally figured out that you could go outside and take pictures in the light, and you didn't have to try to take it in the tunnels, I just started, and I never stopped. I started in 77, and for about another 8 years or so, I took pictures. And I was eventually welcomed into the writers' community when somebody finally overcame their suspicion that a middle-aged white man taking pictures on the platforms could he be anything other than an undercover cop? And so finally somebody approached me, and I said, "No, this is what I'm doing. I'm taking pictures." And from that point, he introduced me to people at the writer's bench, and that included, if not exactly Mayor, it was your brother, somebody in your family was there, and Cal, yeah. And, so I did open up my studio to them. It became kind of a museum, and they welcomed me into their company pretty much on a provisional basis, and finally accepted my presence, which I'm very happy and grateful for. And so that meant that things like this could happen. And this is the graffiti movement has had a role in its own earth-changing, culture-changing activity. I think there was nothing before, and I think that the young kids living in the devastated city that was New York, with no way of expressing themselves and no way of testing themselves to become excellent in some kind of activity, whether it be dance, art, or music, or anything else, in fact, kind of began with their apprenticeship in writing on the trains. So I feel that the change that has culturally taken the world, I was kind of there at the creation, and I'm very happy and lucky and proud of that. So that being the case, to see the ongoing fruition, and every show that comes along is more deeply felt and considered and presented, and this is one of the best I've seen. And again, grateful to you, Mohammed, and everyone who put it together with you. With me is Carlos Mayer, and we've known each other since 77, 78.
I had hair back then.
So did I. A little bit.
Well, Mohammed, and I'll just reiterate the gratitude for the advocacy and support of Henry's work, which is so vital, has proven to be very vital, not just to us, but to society at large, those who may be interested in art or not. There are human stories behind the art that are quite fascinating, and of course the backdrop of a broken city, a war-torn city. He managed to, most importantly, see us, but also allow us to see ourselves. And I think that was one of the things that the photography did for us. It kind of validated us in our effort. And of course, because he was an artist, I think people aren't quite aware how prolific he was as a sculptor, a very good sculptor, and he had a life before graffiti, but he was so compelled to document something that was so fleeting. And it wasn't just the art that was fleeting, there were communities that were fleeting, they were on fire, and lives were being lost to drugs and violence. And, you know, for many of us who were writing, graffiti saved our lives, but I think, you know, part of salvation was the advocacy, your open door, and that we got to look through the portfolios and see what our peers were doing. We had communication with him when things, we would say, oh, we painted something last night, go out, get it, you got it. You really, when I talk about salvation, there is an emotional salvation, you know, for those of us who, you know, wanted a friend, somebody like Henry who was unlikely, like you said, you know, like, who's this guy? Is he a detective? He said, no, he's an artist like us, but from a different space. But he made space for us and allowed us to see ourselves. And then, rest his soul, Tony Silver came to Henry about the movie Style Wars. And I guess initially, right, it was about breakers.
Yeah, it started out being about breakers, you know, and
yeah, maybe you want to talk a little. Please talk a little about Style Wars.
Yeah, Style Wars. I mean, Tony was a friend. You know, when we moved to New York, the only person I knew was a woman named Joan Shigakawa, who was Tony's wife, and so we went to dinner at Tony's house and stuff like that. And I was appearing in things like The Village Voice, and Tony was seeing it, and we were talking about it. And he said to me at one point when there was Sally Baines and Martha Cooper got together and made a Village Voice article about breaking, and it was Rocksteady Crew, and we tried to put on an event demonstration and a performance, basically, of Rocksteady, where they divided themselves into two crews, because it wasn't really a performance, it was a battle. And the real world intervened, and this event never went beyond a dress rehearsal, because the Ballbusters came down from East Harlem, and they were the arch enemy crew, and chased everybody away, basically. And that was the end. The promoter who was going to make this happen said, I don't have insurance to cover this kind of thing, Henry, so too bad, we're not going to do it. So it never went past the dress rehearsal. But that's a world that I was entering into at the time. I've completely forgotten what I was going to say at that point. But it came out of what you were saying, Carlos.
Yeah, about Style Wars. And again, it was something that is like catching lightning in a bottle at that time, and what we didn't realize as young kids, we kind of know this now, the impact that we would have on other young kids that saw themselves in us, that felt voiceless, that felt detached from society, and it was interesting because you know, what you and Tony accomplished was phenomenal in that, and I don't over-exaggerate the impact of your work around the world. And you and I have traveled the world, and you go out there, and I can just by raising your hands, how has Henry affected your work, your life through the books and the films, right? You guys are writers, and that this will be now and forever. And what a legacy to have, and just quite phenomenal that now and forever graffiti has won and earned its space. And this is kind of the kind of testimony, because you guys created space for it, right? And then who knows, in this room or in this community, that will rise in such a spectacular way to, carry this forward, so to speak. And so, in all the years, and on the way, just to say this, because all the years I've known you and done things with you, this moment right now, it's really important, because it's such an epic story that is finally getting its recognition, and your work is it's had its recognition, but at this level where matters most, because it's something that, in a world that's so divided and communities is so divided, we have a common interest and passion amongst all of us, and that's why we showed up, right? And that is the power of your artistic creativity with the photography, your care for us, and so thank you.
Yeah. This idea about which is incredible, which is about the voice, and it started out with, I heard from the very beginning of that writing your name on a train, people defended that and said, but it's our voice. And it was the start, the beginning of what has become, with the following it, the street art movement, which is ever more elaborate, and it is a voice. At the beginning we thought, yeah, you have a voice, but you're just writing your name. How's that your voice? Yeah, but then you understand it's because I exist. This is the thing. Vast, destroyed city, anonymous, with all of your things like the schools. They took away their art, they took away their music in the public schools because there was no money, and there was no way of expressing yourself. And it seems to be if you're an adolescent, you've got to do that. You've got to work in a way that you can perfect something that you do, which is going to also make you stand out. And that was really deprived. They were deprived of that by the situation of the city. And instead of turning to violence, as their older brothers and parents did with the gang movement in New York, this was basically, not entirely, but it was peaceful. You could roam the city, and the train system itself became the means by which you would get to know other people, and that you would get to know them on a basis of professionals in a way. That's somebody that I know of. I know their work. My God, I met them. So then you get a collaboration going. So there was this amazing 600-mile track network happening, and the conditions aren't the same anywhere else other than that crazy city. So I'm grateful to New York too.